The spirit of innovation is deeply ingrained in America, and Google is helping Americans innovate in ways both big and small. Central Texas Regional Mobility Authority is using Google AI to create smarter tolling systems and improve traffic flow for Texans. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at g.co/American innovation.
Lowe's knows to bring your vision to life, it's important to find the right color. That's why My Lowe's Rewards members get a free paint or exterior stain sample to test your look and find the perfect color to confidently refresh your space. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer valid in-store only 5/8 through 5/14. Limit 1 per customer while supplies last. Discount taken at time of purchase. See associate for details. Program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
It is Monday, May 12th, 2025. Welcome back to Hang Up and Listen, the sports podcast here at Slate. Back with you yet again. I'm Alex Kirshner. I'm a contributing writer for Slate, and I also co-host Split Zone Duo, a national college football podcast. This week, we have much to go over. We're going to talk about these raucous NBA playoffs, headlined, I would say, by the New York Knicks giving the Boston Celtics all they can handle, and sometimes apparently more. We will dive into one of the weirdest offseason quarterback sagas in years, the one that is still somehow not done between the Pittsburgh Steelers and Aaron Rodgers, who may or may not be playing quarterback for them this fall. Not sure if they know, not sure if he knows. And we'll discuss a heated public confrontation between the Boston Red Sox and Rafael Devers, the third baseman turned designated hitter, who is, I don't know, one of their franchise cornerstones. We don't see a lot of disagreements like this one unfold so publicly. As usual, joining me to talk about it all this week is Lindsay Gibbs, the publisher of Power Plays, a newsletter that covers the key stories of the moment in women's athletics. Lindsay, hello.
Hello, Alex. I am praying to the lottery gods right now as a North Carolina basketball fan. Charlotte Hornets. Can we get Cooper Flagg? It's up to some balls in a air container, airstream. What do you call those things where the balls pop around?
Popcorn machine.
Popcorn machine, yeah. Isn't that weird? Lotteries are weird. Draft lotteries are weird.
Yeah. Isn't basketball all about whether balls will fall where you want them to, though? Perhaps it's appropriate.
You know what, Ben? You were extremely correct on that. But anyways, that's pretty much where my brain is today. Is by the time you all are listening, it's probably NBA lottery time. So we'll see.
And you've already heard his voice. He's Ben Lindbergh. He is a senior editor at The Ringer. He co-hosts Effectively Wild, a baseball podcast. Ben, did you watch the NHL lottery the other night? And if so, did you have thoughts on how they checked with the, I believe it's an Ernst & Young consultant after every pick to make sure that he was properly writing down the team that was represented by the ball that had come out of the popcorn machine?
I did not, but I appreciate their diligence. Always good to have the Ernst & Young guarantee. No, mostly this weekend I was just soaking up the New York good vibes surrounding the New York Knicks, which we're about to talk about, somewhat dampened by Saturday's performance, but still going strong, riding the high.
Only somewhat. It's going to take more than a blowout loss to dampen the real spirit of New York Knicks fans. Before we get into talking about their team, as always, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making this show possible. Subscribing helps us make the show. It allows you to get the show ad-free. You also get bonus segments, and there is good news. We have one of those live for Slate Plus members right now. It is a check-in of sorts where we are going to tie up a lot of loose ends on topics we have previewed in recent months on Hang Up. We're going to lead with the Ravens cutting ties with their longtime kicker, Justin Tucker, who's facing a litany of sexual misconduct allegations. What's happened since we discussed all kinds of things? We're going to go over them on this bonus segment for our Slate Plus subscribers. You can hear that episode right now as long as you are a Slate Plus member. Subscribe by going to Apple Podcasts and clicking try free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangupplus to get access wherever you listen to podcasts. Ben, you just talked about the enthusiasm that is surrounding the New York Knicks in the city of New York, where you live. I do not live there. I live in Los Angeles, but I spent my Saturday at a Knicks bar here in Southern California, not because I'm a Knicks fan, but because there are a ton of Knicks fans where I live, and they make rooting for the Knicks, famously not always an easy thing to do, look so damned fun that I had to borrow an old Allen Houston jersey from a buddy and put it on for my preferred bandwagon team. The Knicks are the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs, and they were heavy underdogs in this second-round series against the loathed Boston Celtics. That's something that LA people and New York people seem to have in common. And in each of the first 2 games, the Celtics basically destroyed the Knicks, going up 20 points and causing lots of people to turn the games off. Except then another thing happened both times, which was the Celtics self-immolating down the stretch and giving up a massive comeback to lose at home, surrendering home court advantage to Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, and the crew with the New York Knicks. Saturday, Ben, already said it, was a bit of a checkup. The bar was not having a good time watching the Knicks fall down immediately by about 1 million points, and this time not be able to cut into the lead. But I think it only somewhat dampens the spirit. The Knicks are up 2-1 as we record this. Game 4 is Monday night. It looks like it could potentially be a pretty long series. Lindsay, I think this is going to go down as sort of an all-time memorable series no matter what, because either the Celtics are going to come back from this disaster of the first 2 games, or it's going to be a great upset for the Knicks, and they're going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals, where they have not been in a long time. Are you persuaded after these 3 games now that the Knicks are a sincere contender for the Larry O'Brien Trophy?
Oh, we're talking. I thought you were just going to ask if I wanted them to win, if I thought they could win this series.
Well, I mean, we're going to find that out soon enough.
True. No, the Knicks cannot win it all. I'm sorry. The Knicks cannot win it all.
Boo.
Can they possibly win this series? Yes. But even that, I'm having a little bit of a hard time hanging on to at this point. I fear that we're going to have 3 easy Celtics wins to close this out because, honestly, if you look back at the first 2 games, that's how it should have been. The Knicks came back from 20 points down in both of those early games. But my hope is that this can go at least 7. It's been the highlight of the playoffs so far. And one of the sports highlights of the year, seeing the Knicks get those 2 games on the road, coming back, like I said, from 20-point deficits. I mean, you look at these win probability charts, which I know, throughout the game. I know that's not a perfect stat, although I would say what is. But, we're looking in the fourth quarter and saying the Celtics have 98.5% chance of winning the game. The Knicks end up coming back. And if you like to see a team with the aura of the Celtics and the history of the Celtics implode and see a scrappy team like the Knicks overachieve, this series is full of good vibes. Although my favorite part, even though, might be still, we got another great Joe Mazzulla moment. Saturday, after the Celtics finally got their big win to get the series somewhat back on track, Joe Mazzulla talking to the press in what the AP called the Celtics philosopher coach, described the experience of falling behind as dark, but in a good way. This is the fun part, Mazzulla said. You don't get into this journey for it to be easy. You've got to tap into your darkness. This is art.
I get into it for it to be easy. I mean, I absolutely, unequivocally get into it for it to be easy, but to each their own. Ben?
No, this has brought only light to me, not darkness. These playoffs as a whole have been great, but this has been the highlight, personally. And I wish that I still lived close to Madison Square Garden, which is not a sentence that I have said since I moved farther away from Madison Square Garden. But just this weekend, while this is going on, I wished for greater proximity so that I could just feed off the energy to an even greater degree. It has been quite exciting. And it's, I think, really rare and special for me that the Knicks, that a New York team could be a bandwagon team for someone like you, Alex. And I guess that has to do with Pittsburgh's lack of an NBA team in part. Sure. But just the fact that a New York team, which is immensely famous and valuable and storied and global brand known around the world, could be a team that neutral fans root for, consider sort of a scrappy underdog. just feels like cheating. It feels like we're getting away with something. Not that all of our sports teams in New York are good, famously or infamously, but the Knicks are kind of this combination of just well-known and revered and yet terrible for so long that they're really easy to root for, especially going up against the Celtics, where there was this perception that it was just a 3-team race in the playoffs. It was just all about the Thunder, the Celtics, the Cavs. No one else really mattered. No one else was really going to put up a serious fight. And it may well be that Boston comes back to win this series. In fact, I think that's what you would have to bet on. Even when the Celtics were down 2-0, I think they were coin flips to come back. And now that they got one game, it feels like kind of inevitable that they're just going to steamroll the rest of the way. Because, you go down big in game 3 and you're thinking, okay, we've got them right where we want them. This was the playbook from games 1 and 2. And then it turns out maybe that's not sustainable. Maybe you don't want to go down to a double-digit deficit and rely on clawing back in the fourth quarter. So now that the Celtics have been let back in, it feels like, they're up and they're just going to run away with it the rest of the way. But they have been bloodied, and that feels like an important victory in itself.
I've been trying to figure out what it is that appeals to me about the Knicks as a basketball guy who doesn't have a basketball team.
Yeah.
And I think some of it, Ben, is what you say, that they are well known, but it's been forever since they've done anything of note. And their fans have been through a lot thanks to James Dolan and all of that. But also, Lindsay, I think it's a pretty likable crew of players. Jalen Brunson was not re-signed by the Dallas Mavericks because they didn't think he was good enough. He's this pretty small point guard out of Villanova, not a high draft pick. He's got a couple of college teammates on this team. They've got their little podcast, and it's a big podcast, actually, probably bigger than most. Josh Hart and Michael Bridges, who play with them at Villanova. Previously, they had another Villanova guy, Dante DiVincenzo. They're all in a commercial together where they make fun of how Dante DiVincenzo got traded, and he got traded for Karl Anthony Towns, who's not just a great player, but seems like kind of a different kind of guy. Among great NBA players, he's been very publicly vulnerable about his mental health and about going through life in the ways that it can be difficult, even when you're a basketball playing god who's got all the money in the world. I just think this is like a cool crew of players, and so I've enjoyed watching them succeed.
Agreed. And they also now have the Pope on their side.
That they
Don't
do.
forget the Pope, Villanova guy, and Villanova Knicks. And listen, I know he's a Chicago guy, really, but there's no Chicago team in these playoffs. So you got to think that he is streaming from Vatican City these games. And listen, the Knicks will take all the help they can get.
We could have done a whole segment on the sports world's response to the Pope, because that was actually fun on Twitter for the first time in a while, if you're still on there. But I do think it's also just the way the Celtics play, which is kind of this, they're the poster people for so many three-pointers, and it's kind of boring, and it works well in their case usually, except when it doesn't. And we know that there's a greater inherent randomness when it comes to three-point heavy basketball and shooting. And we've seen those shots stop falling famously before. Of course, everyone thinks back to the Rockets and Game 7 in 2018 and 27 straight three-pointers missed. This wasn't quite that, but that is a risk of being built that way. And I think you could say that, well, maybe they failed to adapt to the moment, or they could have just played prevent offense. They could have stopped going for so many threes when they were up big, as opposed to continuing to follow this sort of volatile strategy as that lead was slipping away. And so it felt a little bit like the Knicks were kind of, older school basketball, at least getting their revenge against the Celtics. And the Celtics, what everyone says about just shooting too many threes and being inflexible, that kind of coming true. They're just such a good team. It's not as if the Knicks are like playing with house money exactly here. Knicks fans want to win this series. The Knicks want to win this series. But even just taking 2 from them and those incredible comebacks, just historic deficits to come back from, I'm not going to say that if the Celtics now sweep the rest of the series, or even if it goes 7 or something and they end up eking it out, that's still going to be disappointing because Knicks fans can kind of taste it or at least smell it right now. But it is a moral victory, at least.
I've noticed one thing about the Celtics, Ben, that I thought you would be interested in as well, as someone who cut your teeth sort of in baseball analytics. I do think the Celtics, even to the naked eye, play an interesting brand of mathy basketball. I remember one play that really stuck out to me in this game that they won on Saturday to put their first win on the board in the series, where they have a fast break and it's basically 3-on-2 or sort of a 2-on-1 even. And Peyton Pritchard, who's this guard for Boston, stops and pulls up and puts up a really quick 3-pointer that I think 10 years ago, most coaches would have said, that's a bad shot. Why are you doing that? Take it to the hole. But of course, the Celtics do this. And I think he noticed, I've got more guys coming to get a rebound than there are players on the other team to get that rebound. Mm-hmm. So he throws up a brick, but it gets immediately put back for 2. And meanwhile, you gave yourself a chance at an extra point if the ball went through the rim. And the Celtics do versions of that all the time. It's very noticeable how many 2-on-1s they create, how many 3-on-2s they create. I mean, sports are simple math sometimes, and it does seem like Joe Mazzulla, and I'm sure this is an organizational mandate from on high, does a really nice job putting these players in position to just have more of themselves around the ball than the other guys.
Yeah, and I think they went 25 for 100 from 3 in the first 2 games, and just that's a ridiculous number of 3-pointers to shoot in 2 games for one thing. But when they stop falling, then you look truly terrible and incompetent, and everyone says, well, play differently. And I think it's tough to do that sometimes because you have a game plan and you aren't really wired to deviate from it. And it obviously has worked fantastically well for them. But maybe sometimes there's some adaptation you could do when you're up big in that situation. But it reminds me actually of having kind of a home run heavy offense if you're a baseball team in October, and how frustrating that can be if you're more of an all or nothing team that is swinging for the fences. When you're actually hitting balls over the fences, great. But when you're not, when you're striking out, when you're leaving guys on base, that's incredibly frustrating. And we know, even though fans don't believe it, that having a more home run reliant offense is actually a good thing, both overall and in the playoffs. But it doesn't feel like that sometimes when you're just whiffing over and over again and you're like, just get this guy in from third. That's all we need. 1 run here. And you're just not programmed to play that way. I think it's sort of similar with the 3-pointers where in the long run, it's going to pay off. But a best of 7 series is not the long run.
Lindsay, we're showing Hang-Up's extreme coastal bias here, obviously, and focusing on the Knicks Celtics series. But there are 3 others that are going on right now. All of them either good or shocking in different ways. I'll let you pick where we go. I would just say that I'm really interested in the Thunder Nugget series, 1 seed versus 4 seed in the West, because all of the players on both of the teams appear to be completely out of energy and basically dying on the court by the end of each game, or sometimes by the end of like the first quarter, as they seemed in Game 4. That's 2-2 now. And in Game 4, I noticed that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander went 8 for 19 from the field, and Nikola Jokic went 7 for 22. And that seemed to sum up how that's been going.
Yeah, the battle of the MVPs has taken as Joe Mazzulla would describe it, very dark turn, where they are just not playing well at all. But it's a fascinating series. I love watching the Thunder because of their chemistry. But the Nuggets have a different type of chemistry where they've been through battles before. And I love seeing an experienced team find their best in the tightest moments. And, we've seen the Nuggets steal a game completely from under the Thunder's feet. And that's why this is still a series. You've got inexperience versus experience. You've got the 2 best players all season. You've got one team with a lot of depth and one team with a lot of championship DNA. And you've got Aaron Gordon, who is the hero of the playoffs. So far, I just cannot get enough of Aaron Gordon doing magical things. I love that series. It's also, Pacers are wowing me. I did not see this run coming from the Pacers.
Yeah. Help me out here, Lindsay. Tyrese Halliburton, the best player on the Pacers, has, by my count, and let's see, these are big numbers, so the addition's going to be hard, a total of 15 points in the last 2 games, and the Pacers somehow won game 4 anyway. They're up 3-1 on the best team in the conference. Are the Cavs in deep shit or just knee length?
Oh, I think the Cavs are done. I think this Pacers team is good. I think they are a matchup problem for the Cavs, even on a really good day for the Cavs. And the Cavs are having a lot of injury problems, a lot of health question marks, and the Pacers are playing their best basketball of the season right now. And the Pacers are a team that has elevated when they're playing against the best teams this season, whereas we've not always seen the same from the Cavs. And I love the Cavs team. I hate that Garland's been down. It looks like Mitchell's injured now. You've had Hunter with some injury issues. It's not been good. But they should still not be down this much. But this Pacers team is real, and I think has an actual chance to make it to the finals. I'm not saying I'm predicting it. There's a path.
You're more bullish on the Pacers than you are on the Knicks by the sound of your voice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. 100%.
This is interesting. The other series that's going on, also good, and I think in a lot of NBA second rounds, it would be sort of the talk of the nation. But the Warriors are in a fight, which ostensibly they should be because they're the lower seed, but they're playing the Timberwolves. And the Warriors are the lower seeded team here, but since they got Jimmy Butler a few months ago, we've sort of wondered about, are the Warriors a possibility to do some of the stuff that they've done in the past? This series has had no unbelievably dramatic games, but it's seesawing for the moment. I'm curious if you would take either of those teams seriously as well.
If the Warriors can survive long enough to get Steph back and Steph is okay, I take them very seriously. But that would take a letdown from the Wolves at this point. The Wolves would have to falter, I think, in order for the Warriors to survive this series. But if the Wolves do survive this series, I don't think either the Nuggets or the Thunder look untouchable. I really think that there is a path to the finals for pretty much every team left in the playoffs. I think the Knicks and Cavs are the teams I have the least amount of faith in making the finals. But in the West, it does not look like it's the Thunder and everyone else right now. It just doesn't. The Wolves are playing great basketball.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the rare cases where a team wins the first game of a playoff series and their probability of victory decreases because of the Steph injury and the hamstring strain and his unavailability, though it sounds like he is on the road to return. But how deep will that hole be by the time he gets back? As good as Butler has been, you need that duo both to be out there in order for the Warriors to have any chance. But I guess that is the story consistently across at least some of these series, is that the teams that we thought would just waltz all the way to the finals, not necessarily.
I suppose not, but it is fun. I have really felt my inner NBA fan come to the fore in that kind of, wow, this league way that people talk about. And I do think that there's something that's worth pointing out here for the NBA before I move on. People do love to complain about it when the NBA does things wrong. Like, we did a whole segment on this show a few months ago about what a farce their All-Star weekend is now and how nobody cares and how it is now well past bordering. It's just unwatchable. And yet watching these playoffs just kind of made me feel like that's silly. Like, obviously it's true. Like, the NBA All-Star game is terrible. But if a sports league puts on playoffs like this, then I think the business stuff tends to work itself out. And I just can't bring myself to care that much about who's in the dunk contest when you get to watch multiple series like this 2 or 3 months after that.
Well, LeBron would be thrilled that we've now pivoted to positive coverage of the NBA.
Up next, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the last boy without a date to the quarterback prom, and desperation is setting in. We'll talk about it. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game, shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. Hiring shouldn't be a hassle or a drain on your budget. Upwork is your one-stop shop to find, hire, and pay top freelance talent, saving you time and keeping costs in check. Companies at every stage turn to Upwork to get things done and find more flexibility in the way they staff key projects and initiatives. Upwork's global marketplace is filled with top talent in IT, web dev, AI, design, admin support, marketing, and more. Posting a job on Upwork is easy. With no cost to join, you can register, browse freelancer profiles, get help drafting a job post, or even book a consultation. From there, you can connect with freelancers and easily hire them. Upwork makes the entire process simpler and more affordable with industry-low fees. Post a job today and hire tomorrow with Upwork. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That is Upwork.com to post your job for free and connect with top talent ready to help your business grow. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com. Over the weekend, a couple of hosts at a major Pittsburgh sports talk radio station, 93.7 The Fan, issued a stunning report. The free agent quarterback Aaron Rodgers had joined Nevillewood Country Club, one of the nicest golf courses in the Pittsburgh area. Quote, another sign he's signing with the Steelers, one of the network's drive time hosts reported on Twitter. Alas, the local CBS affiliate got in touch with the club president, who told the channel that Rodgers had not joined the club. But hey, if he did come to the Steelers, Nevillewood Country Club would love to have him. So Nevillewood Country Club members, hang on to your hats. You don't have him yet, but maybe you will. Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. He's also turning 42 this season, and he's been injured or mediocre for several years running. And he was just cast aside by the lowly New York Jets of all franchises. But here we are. It's May 12th. There are 32 NFL teams, and 31 of them have at least someone who could plausibly be considered a starting quarterback for an NFL season. The 32nd team is the Steelers, my boyhood team. They had Rodgers in for a visit in March. It sounded like it went fine, but Rodgers remains unsigned by any other team, including the Steelers, and with seemingly one path, and that's just Pittsburgh, to being a starting quarterback for a team that would actually take him. He hasn't signed with them yet, though. Training camp's in just over 2 months. Ostensibly, he could sign any time, but it's also possible that the Steelers are left to choose between a couple of career backups and a 6th-round rookie. Ben, do you think that this farcical situation tells us more about how far the Steelers have fallen from their perch as one of sports' great franchises, or about Rodgers' frame of mind?
I think probably the former, unfortunately for you. They've just had a really tough time finding a successor to Ben Roethlisberger, including Roethlisberger himself in the latter years of his career. And that's been the thing holding them back. And we've talked about this. It's a Tomlin team. They're not going to be bad. They managed to be respectable and sneak into the playoffs each year. But if they can't figure out their quarterback situation, then it's hard to imagine them doing much more than that. It's also very hard to imagine them tanking because they're the Steelers. I'd be interested in your thoughts on that and whether you would want them to, if it's even conceivable. But with great quarterback prospects who could be obtained in the draft, it would seem to make some sense because really, how good is it going to get with Aaron Rodgers? That's the sad thing here. I mean, this feels inevitable that they will find their way to each other because it's probably the best solution for each of them, but it's not a good solution for the Steelers that this is plan A, that this is the happy outcome. You get Aaron Rodgers, who played better toward the end of last season, but is really a shadow of his former self and obviously brings all sorts of nonsense and distractions and bad PR with him. So if it were any other team, or some other teams at least, I'd say maybe this is a time to just sort of wave the white flag and hope for better things, but that's just not really in the Steelers' playbook.
Alex, I don't understand how the Steelers got here. Like, this is really bleak. To summarize Ben putting it nicely, this is, or to quote Joe Mazzulla again, this is dark, and I'm not sure it's fun. Like, your only hope is maybe getting a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers who is going through what he calls personal issues to sign with you? Like that, it just doesn't seem ideal.
No, I mean, frankly, it sounds like the kind of thing that the Jaguars would have happen to them,
Yeah.
and that the Steelers wouldn't.
The
It's
Titans,
also,
maybe. Like, this is not the Steelers.
I think there's a short answer and a long answer to how did the Steelers find themselves here. I think the short answer is that they have spent years presiding over mediocrity, and but mediocrity with a floor above being bad. But just mediocrity is mediocrity, which is often a pejorative, almost always a pejorative, but it does mean something important in this case, which is not bad enough where you would have a plausibly good quarterback fall into your lap in the draft. And I think the longer answer is that Mike Tomlin really seems to have bungled the situation with his quarterbacks over the last year in particular. Last year, the Steelers wound up with Russell Wilson playing basically for free because the Broncos were paying a massive salary to him that had an offset by any money he would make elsewhere. And so they signed him for really about $1 million to come and play quarterback. And they also had Justin Fields on the roster, who they had picked up off the scrap heap from the Bears. And somehow the Steelers created a situation where either they weren't interested, or in at least one case, the quarterback wasn't interested in continuing that relationship. Justin Fields played pretty well for the first 6 games of last year. The Steelers were 4-2. He was showing some progression as a passer that he had not shown often over the course of his time with Chicago. And the Steelers benched him in a decision that most in the organization, many in the organization anyway, clearly didn't agree with. Mike Tomlin acknowledged it was sort of him going rogue to do this, and put Russell Wilson in. Turns out Russell Wilson is bad. And it's also clear from Fields' comments that he didn't feel fully comfortable. Like, the relationship was compromised with the Steelers after he got benched at 4-2. And so he goes to the New York Jets. He probably isn't any good, but he might be. We still don't completely know, which is really something to say for a quarterback who was drafted in 2020. Jets guaranteed him $30 million. And yeah, the Steelers are going to have a quarterback room, if Rodgers does not sign, that has a total of just over 5,000 NFL passing yards, most of those for Mason Rudolph, the longtime third stringer with the Steelers, who went to the Titans last year, where he was bad enough that he helped the Titans get the first overall pick. Skylar Thompson, a fellow Kansas State University former player, who is also a backup in this league, and the 6th-round quarterback out of Ohio State, Will Howard. It's malpractice, particularly, Ben, for a team that makes the playoff a lot of the time and obviously loses by 3 or 4 touchdowns once it gets there, because that's kind of the Mike Tomlin special at this point. So you asked me, would you like to see a tanking?
Right.
And every time a Steelers fan says yes to this, you get NFL fans of other teams coming forward to say, no, brother, you don't want that. Like, it ain't good out here. Like, it's you don't want what we've had the last 10 years. And while it is totally true that whoever the Steelers hire after Mike Tomlin will be worse than Mike Tomlin, I mean, this is basically a guarantee. Mike Tomlin's going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah, at some point, I'm just exhausted by this. So I'd give the Steelers one more year to find a quarterback in the draft. Or, yeah, please part ways, because this is not fun. And I would be okay with rolling the dice with a couple of 4-13s if it created a plausible pathway to something more fun.
I think my favorite thing about this, favorite is the absolute wrong word I would like to clarify, and I know that, is that when I was Googling this and researching for the show, there were multiple articles that seemed legitimately worried about whether or not Aaron Rodgers would wait to make this decision right before the NFL schedule release day, which is Wednesday. So I think they're worried that he's going to try and steal the thunder of the NFL schedule release, but also that he doesn't want his decision to impact the scheduling of NFL primetime games, but the NFL would, of course, like him to make his decision. And I just feel like when you are treating the schedule release as a character in a story, you've jumped the shark.
Yeah. I don't know what his current personal issues refer to, but he has permanent personal issues of some sort, obviously. And you can maybe stomach that if he's peak Aaron Rodgers, one of the best quarterbacks of all time. But at this stage, what are you getting in exchange for that? And I think we talked last year when the Steelers were eliminated I asked you, Alex, do you feel like Tomlin is good enough to get them there and not good enough to get them over the hump? And you said yes. And obviously it's not just Tomlin. It's also that you have to have a quarterback. But he's never had a losing season. And I assume he's not interested in starting now. And so, yeah, you're going to have to move on from him in order to pull the plug. And it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen. And there's something to be said for never being bad.
Oh, there is.
A lot of teams would take that. But there are higher expectations at this point, Stairway to 7 and all the rest. And I don't know how they get there.
I think you're right that there is something good about rooting for a team like this, which is that I know for a fact it can be taken to the bank that in December, my football team will be playing meaningful football games. But what does meaningful mean, right? Like it's thinking about, is there a higher than 0.0% chance of going to the Super Bowl because the season is alive and you could make the playoffs? And the answer technically is that there is, but it does go to what we want as fans out of sports. And I think it is somewhat hard to always be satisfied in this regard. I think we want the possibility, like the sincere possibility of making a deep run every year. And the Steelers just simply don't have that. And the only way to have it is to find a way to get a really good quarterback. And it's not just when you have Mike Tomlin that you can't get that, but the Steelers have Cameron Hayward still on their defensive line. Hall of Famer playing at an all-pro level. They got TJ Watt, one of the handful of best edge rushers in the history of football on their team. So it is hard to suck that bad when you have those guys. But now, Lindsay, we are staring down the barrel of a huge mess here. I write a column for The Athletic in their newsletters on the weekends, and I asked Mike Sando of The Athletic, who's a longtime NFL writer, covered the league for decades, very well sourced up, great institutional memory of football, if he could remember this shambolic of an offseason quarterback situation. And he said that the Steelers must have an arrangement with Rodgers, right? Like they must, or else this would go into a territory that we have not seen arguably since the 2001 Cowboys, when their quarterback room was Quincy Carter, Anthony Wright, Ryan Leaf, and Quint Storner, all playing roles on that team. Just wanted to take you down memory lane.
Nightmare blunt rotation.
Nightmare blunt. And also, George Pickens is now a Cowboy. So this is another thing about next year. This year's best receiver of the last couple of years, probably wouldn't be this year because they made a trade for DK Metcalf, is now a Cowboy. So what's happening in Pittsburgh in 2025? I wish I knew.
It's tough sometimes when you have a franchise quarterback who's there forever. One risk is that you stay with them too long just because of the great memories you have, just because of their standing with the organization. And it's easier said than done just to have a great successor just waiting in the wings when that guy gets old, as Roethlisberger did before he actually sailed off into the sunset. It's hard just to time it so that, okay, we've got the next franchise guy who's the understudy for that great guy who shepherded us through the past few decades. But you can see that it really is like you lose your identity as a franchise potentially. Maybe you miss out on some opportunities to get a younger successor who could step in when you need him to. And then you're just flailing for a while. And that's where they are.
Alex, if I were you, I would steel myself for some rocky roads ahead.
Mm-hmm. I'm afraid that the no losing seasons streak of 18 years for Mike Tomlin, which Ben, you just referenced, is going to end this year. It's a cool stat, but I'm also tired of hearing it. And I think with this quarterback room, year number 19 could be the charm for those who have been looking for the Steelers to have a losing season under Mike Tomlin. We'll find out. But up next, we're going to ask Ben Lindbergh to change positions. And if he doesn't do it, Slate's top brass are going to get involved, possibly even board a flight, to remind him that we at Hang Up are a team. Back after this. As we progress through the season, every fan knows that big wins are hard to come by and tough losses are even harder to accept. But do you know what isn't hard to accept? Discover. Believe it or not, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard that right. 99%. So make a good call for your wallet and get Discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. This episode is sponsored by the San Diego State University Sports MBA program. SDSU's Sports MBA is a full-time, in-person graduate program that trains students for sports business roles with team front offices, agencies, venues, brands, and more. The program's curriculum includes all of the quantitative coursework of a typical MBA, but adds a sports focus with themes familiar to regular Hang-Up listeners, such as the growth of women's sports, labor relations, athletes' rights, and social responsibility. SDSU Sports MBA students even spend a week studying abroad in the Dominican Republic to learn about the many ways Major League Baseball's presence impacts the country. Throughout their studies, students serve as interns, consultants, and part-time employees with sports organizations across Southern California, including the San Diego Padres. Applications are currently being accepted through July 1st for an August 2025 start. Visit sdsu.edu/hangup to learn more and apply. That's sdsu.edu/hangup. Rafael Devers is one of the most important Boston Red Sox. He has been the team's most valuable player since 2019, accruing the 15th most wins above replacement of any position player in baseball in that time, according to Fangraphs. Rafi is a fan favorite, hitting 30-ish home runs every year. You can set your watch to it with a smile on his face. And 2 years ago, he signed a 10-year contract for north of $300 million to stay with Boston for the long haul. But things have been a bit fraught lately, even though 440-foot homers like the one he hit in Kansas City on Sunday do tend to have a way of making everyone a bit happier. Devers is a great hitter, but a pretty mediocre third baseman. Lousy third baseman, I would say. And late in the offseason, the Red Sox noticed that longtime Houston Astros star Alex Bregman was still a free agent, and they thought to themselves, we'd love to have Alex Bregman. He's also a good hitter. He also plays third base. And simply put, he is way better at the third base part of it than Devers is. Your eyes would tell you that. Every defensive stat would tell you that. Bregman's Gold Glove last year at third base would tell you that too. So Boston signed Alex Bregman and made him the third baseman, and he has been great. But they made this signing over some pretty loud objections from Devers, who initially said that he would not move off third base to become a designated hitter. He then relented. He did so. And the Red Sox had said that they would not play Devers in the field at all this year. They wanted him to focus on being a great designated hitter. But then, plot twist, in the first week of May, Boston's often injured first baseman, Tristan Casas, got hurt again. He'll be out for what seems like a very long time. The Red Sox approached Devers about dropping his DH role and moving to play first base. And Devers did not appreciate that the team had asked him this. Ben, I'm to understand that this is now a major incident involving the owner of the team boarding a jet. What a mess. Tell me about it.
Yeah, this is the rare situation where there's so much blame to go around that you can kind of pin this on everyone, at least to some degree. So that's fun to talk about. And it's also, I think, interesting, even if you're not a Red Sox fan or a baseball fan, because it touches on the broader issue of what obligation do teams have to players and what obligation do players have to teams? Once they're under contract, if they're asked to do something that they haven't historically done, should they do it? Do they have a leg to stand on? If they say, no, I'm not, does that mean that you're not a team player? So Devers has been jerked around a little bit here, but arguably he's been a bit of a jerk himself. That's why it's just hard to say it's this person's fault or that person's fault. You can certainly understand where he's coming from. And I think a lot of this has stemmed from the fact that he feels assurances were made to him, that when he signed that extension a couple of years ago, which was under a different regime, Chaim Bloom was the chief baseball officer, as the Red Sox call their top baseball executive back then, and Devers says that they made assurances to him that he would not move off of third base. And even more recently, manager Alex Cora said that's going to be his position. But then circumstances change. Devers' play at third base declined, and Bregman was available. He was there late into the free agent market, and they had the opportunity to pick him up on a smaller deal than he was expected to get. And again, as you mentioned, he's been the best player on the team thus far, though Devers has been raking himself. And then even more recently, when they finally, over his objections, convinced him not to play third base, that would be Bregman's position, and that Devers would DH, he says they told him, forget about playing the field at all. You can just mothball your glove for this season. And yet, here they are, not even 2 months into the season, saying, actually, scratch that. we now want you to play first base, which he has never done professionally, in fairness to him. However, again, circumstances have changed. Not only has Tristan Casas gone down probably for the season, but one of his immediate replacements is now also on the IL. They're just trying to piece this together with call-ups from AAA, utility players. The rest of their lineup has been pretty strong, but this is just a black hole offensively at this point. So I would think that as an observer, if I were a teammate of Devers, if I were a fan of the Red Sox, probably even if I were Devers' employer, I would like him to step up and volunteer and say, yeah, we have this pressing need. I'll at least give it a go. And yet there's all this history here. And so I think the question is really, can you make promises to a player? You can promise to pay them something. In baseball, contracts are guaranteed, and he's being very well paid, and the money's not going away. But beyond that, can you actually expect anything? Or ultimately, is how you're used or whether you're used up to your team?
Lindsay, it's interesting because this discussion, I feel like, would never happen in almost any other sport for different reasons, right? Like in soccer, if you asked Lionel Messi, I mean, you wouldn't make him a center back, but if you asked Lionel Messi to move to the wing from striker, or if you asked a great defensive midfielder to move up and play more of a central midfield role for a game, you wouldn't get any problem. If you asked a shooting guard in the NBA to carry the ball up, you probably wouldn't have a ton of objection if the player did that for a couple of games or even for an entire season. Or if you asked a point guard to play a little bit off the ball. In football, you wouldn't ask a quarterback to be a wide receiver, and you wouldn't even ask a tight end to be an offensive lineman or any of this. But in baseball, it is so dramatic that I suppose, it's understandable, like Devers, to be more upset about being asked to do something like this than it would be to ask kind of a peer in a different sport. But I still don't know if I can get down with how tough he has been about this to the Red Sox. Can you?
I can a little bit. I mean, the $313.5 million contract does make it hard for me to feel any amount of real sympathy or empathy for the situation. But I do think that there's a struggle when you are a star athlete and you've honed your skills in this specific area and you are asked to be put in a position by your coaches where you don't think you are being set up to succeed and to be your best. And, reading Ken Rosenthal's article, column about this, he said that Devers even risks injury, with this move. Injury, offensive regression, and embarrassment is what Rosenthal described kind of the downside of for Devers. And I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that. Also, when you feel like you've been given management's word about what your role on the team was and what your value to the team was, and now you feel like that's going back on that, there's pride involved. There's pride involved with all of these athletes. And so I do feel a little bit like I understand, because this isn't the first time he's been asked to switch positions, because he's already shifted his role in the team. I wonder if the Red Sox just have kind of really poorly managed this from a star and ego management side, from an off-season acquisition perspective. And if Devers doesn't have some point in saying, this is not what is best for me in my career.
Yeah, I think part of it is just he was this franchise cornerstone. He's the one who stayed. Mookie Betts was traded away. Xander Bogaerts left. And Devers decided that he was just going to be the cornerstone for perhaps the rest of his career. And he's also only 28, which is a little young to be told, hey, put your glove away or you can't play this position anymore, even if it's true in his case. Now, he's being a bit dramatic about it, frankly, because he said, I know I'm a ball player, but at the same time, they can't expect me to play every single position out there. Well, they're hardly doing that. They're asking him to play the easiest position to play in the field. He said, next thing you know, someone in the outfield gets hurt and they want me to play in the outfield. outfield. I don't think they're going to want him to play in the outfield. There's no slippery slope here. This is a very standard transition to make at some point in your career, unless you're like a Gold Glove guy at third base. It's very common to be asked to move to first base. And there would probably be some hiccups. I don't know that he would be a great natural first baseman, but history suggests even subpar third basemen can generally go and play a competent first base. Now, he'd be asked to do that in the middle of the season with no prior experience, and that makes it tougher. As the Moneyball line goes, it's incredibly hard, but it's less hard than any other position. And there is a need here, so they're not just asking him on a whim. Granted, how much better would it actually make them if he's struggling to pick up first base on the fly? It's not like they have a great DH ready to go to replace him. He is hitting very well, as he always does at DH since an ice-cold start to the season. And so you could blame the Red Sox for not building in some redundancy on this roster. They just had no first base depth at all, even though Casas has had injuries in the past and hasn't been that great. And you could also, I think, blame them for the messaging. Maybe they made too many promises. Maybe you shouldn't make promises because you can't guarantee that someone's just going to be entrenched at a position forever.
I do think the Red Sox mess up here, but there's something, Ben, about first base that makes the request seem a little bit more reasonable to me. First base historically is where you tell a guy who can't field, hey, please go there so that we can keep your bat in the lineup. I mean, Bryce Harper plays first base now for the Phillies. He's done this for the last couple of years. Had Bryce Harper ever played first base in his life? I mean, granted, he was injured. He had a throwing issue and it was an off season. But like Bryce Harper has a little bit more status in the game than Rafael Devers and said, yeah, I'll go play first base.
Yeah, he was eager to do it. And he had changed positions in the past. He came up as a catcher, was drafted as one at least. But yes, he was very much, hey, put me in coach kind of attitude. And Devers has not done that. And it seems like Craig Breslow, the current chief baseball officer, has rubbed him the wrong way. And this wasn't communicated well. And maybe Alex Cora wasn't the one to bring this to him. And Breslow said, well, it was really just an idea. It was an exploratory kind of conversation. And maybe Devers took it the wrong way. So clearly, there is a communication breakdown here, and that's why everyone got on a plane to go out and try to straighten this out. But it doesn't appear as if there's been much of a détente or a thawing in the relationship thus far. He did seem pretty determined. Now, he initially took a pretty hardline stance in spring training and said, I'm a third baseman, and then eventually he was talked down from that. Maybe he will change his tune again here, but it does seem like this relationship has been damaged. And that's not great with a guy who is under contract for this long.
Going back to Alex's point about how not a huge deal this would be in other sports. I think back to the Washington Mystics in 2019 when they won their championship in the WNBA, when Elena Delle Donne and Emma Miesemann, both two of the best power forwards in the league, had to figure out how to coexist together. And it involved a lot of moving Elena Delle Donne, an MVP, to the 3. And she was vocal that she much preferred being at the 4, but what worked best for them was Elena Delle Donne at the 3, Emma Miesemann at the 4, and LaToya Sanders at center. You see that a little bit in the NBA. Anthony Davis has complained a lot about not being a center, but being played there. Of course, U.S. women's national team, Crystal Dunn being played at fullback on the national team, even though she's one of the best midfielders in the world for club. And there's been a lot of tension there, and she's been vocal about how hard it is to play out of position, to be put in a position where you don't feel like you're personally able to succeed the most you are, but ultimately someone is deciding that this is what's best for the team. And I do feel for these players, but at the end of the day, it's a team sport, At the end of the day, it's a team sport.
Yeah, I think that's been kind of a common reaction, even among people who are very pro-labor typically and say, hey, go get your money and you deserve it and that's great. Once you do get your money, it's somewhat out of your hands. Not entirely. Obviously, you can exercise some leverage here and go public, as Devers has, but it's not going to endear you to fans, certainly. And even though Devers said that his clubhouse relationships are good, The Red Sox beat writers have certainly been talking about some smoke about teammates frowning on this. Of course, they're not going to go on the record and criticize Rafi, a team leader here, but it sounds like it wasn't exactly all smiles in the Red Sox clubhouse as he was making a big stink about this again. And you'd think that he would want to do this, even if there's some stubbornness and some bitterness about the way things went down in spring training. It's probably better for him long-term to be a first baseman. If you're a DH, there's nowhere to go but the bench if you don't hit. You want to stay as high on the defensive spectrum as you can, and you can offer a little more value to your team potentially if you're even an average first baseman than you can as even a good DH. And a lot of players hit better when they are playing in the field than they do when they're DHing. That applies mostly to part-time DHs. If you're a full-time dedicated DH, the way that David Ortiz used to be for the Red Sox, then you kind of adjust to that role. But a lot of guys play the field. They like playing the field. Devers liked playing the field. That was one reason why he was so reluctant to stop playing third. So if they could get past the circumstances that led to this, I would think that it would be the best solution for all involved, for him at least to take some grounders over there, see how it feels. And if he's a disaster, then okay, you can reevaluate and maybe the Red Sox can trade for someone. But when you sign someone to a contract for that much money and you make that kind of commitment, I guess you want it to be kind of a two-way street where the player says, okay, you gave me this money, I will now be willing to be used within reason the way that you want to use me as long as it's best for the team. And he hasn't seemed to take to this with quite that attitude.
As we progress through the season, every fan knows that big wins are hard to come by and tough losses are even harder to accept. But do you know what isn't hard to accept? Discover. Believe it or not, Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. You heard that right. 99%. So make a good call for your wallet and get Discover. Based on the February 2024 Nielsen report. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. It is time for Afterballs. And Ben, we have talked about kind of a baseball mess of one kind here. I want to talk about a baseball mess of a different kind. And it actually involves a team that we will touch on briefly in our Slate Plus bonus segment this week. That is the Colorado Rockies, who lost a baseball game on Saturday. And you're already sighing because, you'll see if you don't already know. They lost 21-0 at home at Coors Field to the Padres on Saturday. The Rockies are one of the worst baseball teams this year that I think anybody has ever seen playing in Major League Baseball, and I do not believe that their terrible season is about to get the tonic of a major world leader turning out to be a fan of their team, as happened for the White Sox last year. No, the Rockies are just terrible. They are 7-33 as we record this, and Saturday was certainly a nadir. The next day after their game, even though they won the next day, they fired their manager, Bud Black. Sure, fine, agree, but don't really think that's going to fix it. Anyway, 21-0. That is a lot. That is a lot of runs to lose by. It made me wonder, how many years had it been since the Rockies had lost a game by 21 runs? So I checked, and it turns out that to find the last time the Rockies lost a game by 21 runs or more, you actually have to go back an entire 2 years. That's right. It had never happened in the history of the franchise, but it's happened twice just since 2023. The last occasion for this to happen to the Colorado Rockies came on June 24th, 2023. Not quite 2 years ago yet. A loss by a score of 25-1 to the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, I might add. And the Rockies needed mop-up duty that day, as you're always going to need from your pitching staff when you are down 24-0, as they were at this point in this game, going into the 7th inning of that day. And so the Rockies turned to Karl Kauffmann, who was a second-round pick out of Michigan in 2019. The score is 24-0, the 7th inning, and Kauffmann comes into the game, and he pitches 3 innings basically stopping the bleeding, letting up just 1 run for the rest of the game and finishing it out for Colorado. The Rockies then gave Kauffman 6 more outings of largely the most classic mop-up duty that you can imagine, and in his final game that season, he threw 4 1/3 innings for a team that entered with a record of 58-102 on September 30th, 2023. The Rockies lost that day, 14-6 to the Minnesota Twins, and Kauffman gave up 8 earned runs in long relief. Now, if there's anything we know about a relief pitcher who's allowed to give up 8 earned runs in a game on September 30th in Major League Baseball, we are talking about a guy who is being completely hung out to dry. The team is out of arms. They are not interested in throwing their other pitchers in the course of that game, and they say, sorry, Carl Kauffman, this is on you. We need a lot of innings out of you today, and whatever happens to your ERA happens to your ERA. Sorry about that. Anyway, 8 earned runs in relief. They lose 14-6. Very bad. They put him in a position where he had no support, and he was basically asked to finish out their season for them with no help. Yeah. So Ben Lindbergh, today, you are being asked to finish out this episode of Hang Up and Listen with no help. Lindsay and I have done nothing to support this Afterball. It is completely you. We don't care what happens to your arm. And so I ask you, what is your Carl Kauffman of this episode of Hang Up and Listen? By the way, Carl Kauffman yet to return to the majors. He's in the minors for Colorado, and we hope he gets back.
You gave me more support than Carl Kauffman got just setting up this Afterball, so that's I appreciate true. It. Yeah. And I applaud your not going with coughed up 8 runs, because that's probably what I would have said. That was actually the first year that the Rockies had ever lost 100 games. And since then, they decided, wow, we're good at this losing thing, and let's not stop. They've never actually won their division dating back to 1993, their inaugural season, but they'd managed not to be terrible until lately, and now they're making up for lost time. Perhaps they should sign the subject of my Afterball today, because they couldn't get any worse than they are currently. On Sunday, the Toronto Maple Leafs lost 2-0 to the Florida Panthers in Game 4 of the Eastern Conference second round, knotting that NHL series at 2. But those were not the only Leafs to lose to Panthers on Sunday, because earlier the same day, the Toronto Maple Leafs lost 6-5 to the Kitchener Panthers. I am speaking, of course, of the Toronto Maple Leafs of the Intercounty Baseball League, who narrowly lost their season opener, but made some exciting history nonetheless, thanks to their starting pitcher, Ayami Sato, who became the first woman to play professional baseball in Canada. The IBL, which has operated continuously since 1919 and currently comprises 9 Ontario teams, is sometimes described as a semi-pro circuit, but it's the top independent baseball league in Canada. The league has employed loads of former and future affiliated minor leaguers, and more than 40 former or future major leaguers have passed through it too, including 48-year-old Fernando Rodney, who is pitching for the Hamilton Cardinals this season. Normally, we wouldn't take note of IBL opening day, but there was something notable that happened here. Over the winter, the Toronto Blue Jays failed to sign Roki Sasaki, whose performance for the Dodgers so far hasn't given the Jays much cause to lament losing out on him. But the Maple Leafs landed the highly touted Japanese pitcher they targeted in December when they signed Sato, who is widely regarded as the best female player, or certainly pitcher, in the world. Now, I want women to succeed in professional baseball, whether in women's leagues or in leagues predominantly populated by men, but I must concede that on the whole, they have not been very effective in their high-level trials against the guys. We don't have very reliable or comprehensive stats for turn of the 20th century stars like Lizzie Murphy and Lizzie Arlington, or 1950s Negro Leaguers Tony Stone, Connie Morgan, and Maybe Johnson, but the numbers from the past few decades tend to tell a similar story. Julie Croteau, the first woman to regularly play NCAA baseball, batted .222 as the second-string first baseman for a Division III team that went 120-1, then batted .078 with no extra base hits for the 6-38 Colorado Silver Bullets. Silver Bullets versus Rockies might be an interesting showdown. They were a women's team that played against semi-pro men, followed by a 1-for-12 showing by Croteau in the Hawaii Winter Baseball League. Isla Borders recorded a 6.75 ERA with more walks than strikeouts over 52 games and 101 and a third innings in indie ball from 1997 to 2000. Former teenage knuckleball sensation Eri Yoshida, who's actually younger than Sato, managed a 7.62 ERA with way more walks than strikeouts in 21 games and 78 innings in indie ball from 2010 to 2012. Stacey Piagno had a 7.67 ERA in 16 games and 27 innings for the Sonoma Stompers, the franchise featured in my book, The Only Rule Is It Has to Work. Back in 2016 and 2017, her former teammate Kelsey Whitmore, a two-way player, has compiled a 12.04 ERA in 39 games and 49 and a third innings and a 169 OPS in 91 plate appearances in indie ball from 2016 to 2024. She tried out this spring for a team in the Mexican League but didn't quite make the cut. Olivia Pichardo, the first woman to play NCAA Division I baseball, has appeared in only a few games for Brown, and in 2 seasons of collegiate summer ball, she's batted 107 and slugged 179, albeit with enough walks and hit by pitches to post a .356 on-base percentage. In other words, we're a long way away from Ginny Baker, star screwball artist for the San Diego Padres in the late-lamented single-season TV series Pitch, which aired on Fox in 2016. I don't mean to diminish the pioneering nature of what these non-fictional women have accomplished, and I think they had it harder than their male competitors, what with the publicity and pressure heaped on them, the sporadic play they've received, the isolation and subpar facilities they've faced. But if you're holding out hope of seeing a woman in the majors or even the affiliated minors, and I certainly want women to have the opportunity to play in those leagues if they have the desire and talent to, then a necessary step along the way would probably be not just to play against men, but to play very well against them. And so far, that hasn't happened consistently. That's why all eyes, or many eyes, including mine, are on Sato, who may be the most accomplished woman ever to play against men. The 35-year-old 5'5" righty has thrown out a ceremonial first pitch for the Padres, but that's not her main claim to fame. Sato has helped pitch the Samurai Japan women's team to 6 consecutive Women's Baseball World Cup titles, and she's a 3-time MVP of that tournament. She also dominated the Japan Women's Baseball League, leading that circuit in strikeouts in 3 of its last 4 seasons before it shut down in 2021. Sato was featured in See Her, Be Her, a documentary that premiered on MLB Network last October and is now on Prime Video. She's also supposed to be the subject of another documentary called Ayami Sato, Curveball, which will chronicle her season in the IBL. Will her mid-70s mile-per-hour heat, paired with a splitter and a high-spin curveball, play in this league? I don't know, but so far, so good.
The 2-2, swing and a miss, strike 3. Ayami Sato with her first strikeout in the Intercounty Baseball League. This is fun to watch. Another former Leaf, Jamie Cabral. He hits it softly on the ground to first, gobbled up by Castaldo. Cabral with a headfirst dive. Ayami Sato, fantastic. With Lepard Wilmery up in the bullpen, that's probably her last inning yet. She gets the handshake from Rob Butler. Unbelievable. Ayami Sato, 2 1-2-3 innings, including a strikeout. Great start to her Maple Leafs career.
In her debut, Sato got Kitchener's leadoff batter Nick Parsons to tap a ball back to her for an easy putout, and she kept cruising. Since this was the first game of the season, she didn't go deep, but as you just heard, she pitched 2 perfect innings, 6 up, 6 down, with 1 strikeout. It took her only 15 pitches, and 12 of them were strikes. Maple Leafs manager Rob Butler, a former Blue Jays outfielder who's still the only Canadian to win a World Series with a Canadian club, said, "It's a beautiful story. I can't believe how lucky I am to be a part of this." Reliever Alex Kirshner said, "She was completely unfazed before, during, after. I don't know how someone goes up there in that spot in this setting and doesn't seem nervous at all, and she killed it." About 2,000 spectators were on hand, including multiple girls' teams who came to see Sato and chanted her name. Sato, holding back tears, told the Globe and Mail, "I was looking at the future of female baseball." Speaking of which, Sato is a special advisor to the Women's Professional Baseball League, which is slated to launch in the U.S. next year. Last December, she said, "If I have the opportunity to play in the league in the future, I would love to participate." If women's professional baseball gets reestablished in North America, it could be a springboard for some standout players who want to test themselves against men. But it could also put an end to the idea that female baseball players should aspire to play against men. It's not as if we talk about WNBA or NWSL or WTA Tour players as prospects for men's leagues. Those women's leagues aren't means to an end, but ends in themselves. So, one way or another, Sato's season seems significant, whether as a proof of concept for female players in men's leagues or as a swan song for that tradition of trailblazers. Regardless of whether the NHL's Maple Leafs advance, you can catch the IBL's Maple Leafs and Sato's exploits between now and mid-August. They have 41 games to go.
What a time for Maple Leafs. One of the best there's ever been.
That's incredible, Ben. Thank you for that story. I did not know that.
Ben, we do appreciate it. Excellent Afterball. That's all for this episode, but we also have a bonus show that is live right now for our treasured Slate Plus subscribers. It's about a scatter of topics that we've focused on in recent weeks, but we're going to start with the Baltimore Ravens cutting ties with Justin Tucker. We'll also touch on Bill Belichick, maybe even those same Rockies we just talked about, vert skateboarding, all kinds of things that we've talked about in recent weeks on Hang Up and want to quickly come back to. To hear it, you can subscribe to Slate Plus on Apple Podcasts. You can do that by clicking Try Free at the top of our show page or visiting slate.com/hangup+ to get access wherever you get podcasts. The episode is available right now, this moment, and we look forward to seeing you there. Our show notes are at slate.com/hangup. You can email us at hangup@slate.com. We do read them. Love getting them. And don't forget to follow the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Our producer this week is Patrick Fort. And for Ben Lindbergh and Lindsay Gibbs, I'm Alex Kirshner. Remember Zelma Beatty, and thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Josh Levine. My podcast, The Queen, tells the story of Linda Taylor. She was a con artist, a kidnapper, and maybe even a murderer. She was also given the title the Welfare Queen, and her story was used by Ronald Reagan to justify slashing aid to the poor. Now, it's time to hear her real story. Over the course of 4 episodes, you'll find out what was done to Linda Taylor, what she did to others, and what was done in her name.
The great lesson of this for me is that people will come to their own conclusions based on what their prejudices are.
Subscribe to The Queen on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now.